I've been in dogs since 1991. We breed dogs that we want to train. I was out here in western Nebraska riding Harleys and training dogs. I don't sugarcoat anything, and if you don't like it, tough.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Flatlander Kennels podcast with Chris Jobman. I am Elliot, and we are here again with Chris and our guest for the second episode in a row, Eric Teson. We're going to talk about grand preparation because the grand is coming up here real soon, and then also we're going to go to podcast Q&A questions that were presented over on the Facebook group, the Flatlander Kennels Facebook group over there. So go and join that. Chris, take it away.
Hey guys, thanks for joining. Eric, thanks for coming back. Pleasure to have you on here. But let's talk about the grand. Yep, the grand starts, I believe, April 20th. Is that right? We're going to Georgia again. I remember these grounds sort of. I don't remember these grounds are really, really nice from what I remember. But let's talk about. I did this with Chris Aiken a year ago, so we're going to do this with you today. Let's talk about a little bit of a grand preparation. And we're not going to get into a whole episode of grand preparation. If you want to listen to that, listen to the episode with Chris Aiken and I. That was literally over an hour of just talking about grand. This one, we're going to talk about grand preparation, hit some big bullet points that people need to know about, and then do a Q&A with Eric and all of his wisdom, which shouldn't take too long. But anyway, let's do this. Let's go grand preparation. Eric, give us, how many grands have you ran now?
Oh, boy, I would have liked to known that was a question coming. I have no clue. I ran two with you. Is that what I ran with you?
I think
another
so.
8 cents. So 10? Have I been through 10 grands now? That would be impressive.
Oh, man. Yeah, probably. 5 years worth.
Let's go 6, 7, 8 at least. 8
at least,
wow.
Probably. That's about right. So, give us as a newer guy running the ground because it's more instilled in your brain than it is mine. Because I did mine 23 years ago was my first one, something like that. So, give us when you're walking to the line at the grand, you're standing in the briefing, the gun safety, all the BS that you got to do. You're getting your camo on. You look really, really good going to the line with all your camo. Give us what you think of the nerves that tell us what you're thinking about your nerves. What's the biggest hurdle when it comes to all that? Because we have a question in our question deal here about nerves and the grand. Talk about your nerves and stuff when it comes to that.
Boy, you're going to talk about going from my first one to now. My first one, I was still at FLK. I ran Ammo, Hope, and Pearl, I believe. I ran Pearl on my very first one.
And did you run Finn too? You ran 5, didn't you? Did you run 3 or 5?
I can't remember. If I
anyway, it doesn't matter.
They weren't.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you went to the third series. You went to the third series of your first grand. I do remember that.
Yeah, with Pearl.
Yeah, you went to the third. Yeah.
So I would say that grand I was probably more nervous running the boss's dog than I was running the grand. That was pressure. So that wasn't easy. My first one, it's so long ago. I know I was nervous. It's one of those things, and I'm going to kind of address that question now a little bit. Our grand training group does such a great job training and laying out the scenarios and making it comfortable between us. And since we are the majority of our grand flight, when I
run this question, let me interrupt you, Eric. Let me interrupt you. This question is from Ryan Franz. This question was Ryan Franz. How do you handle nerves at the grand or the masters from dog to dog even on a weekend test, the Grand, the Master Nationals, blah, blah, blah. So this is a question that we got. So let's talk about, since we're going to talk about Grand, let's talk about this. So keep going.
Yeah. So where I was going is our training group is the majority of our Grand flight. And it's also that we're all very close friends. Me, you, and Rhett talk probably every day, and Aiken's right there with that everyday talk. So when I'm running the Grand, I am very blessed. I've been very blessed as a trainer, having Chris, and everybody else, help me along the way. But when I'm surrounded, pinched in between the Chris's, that's probably more nerve-wracking keeping up with the Joneses than running the Grand itself. Hey, is Chris's dog going to look that much better? If Chris Aiken's dog does it, mine doesn't, and Chris Jobman's dog does it, how's that making me look right now? You know what I mean? So that alone is probably more pressure than the Grand itself now. My first Grands, I was probably so nervous. I know I was so nervous. I made mistake after mistake because I was nervous. I was trying to worry about everything around me and not worry about me and the dog. And when it comes down to it, it's just about you, the dog, and the test. So concentrate on that. But like I was saying, now I don't want to say it's easy or it's not nerve-wracking, but since our group goes and trains together before the Grand and we run the Grand in almost the same order that we're training in, a lot of those nerves have left. It's more about getting there and doing our jobs, and it's very, very easy going from our group to the actual Grand. Not saying that we get that big giant punch bird or that banded water blind. That doesn't make you nervous running that. When you're running a test, no matter what, you got a little bit of nerves. It's you, the dog, and what you've trained that dog to do against the world. You're on display for everyone to see. So that's a little nerve-wracking, just thinking, hey, have I prepared this dog well enough to pass this test? So that's really where most of my nerves are now. Going back to the beginning, as I'm sitting here talking about it, I start recalling things that happen. You find every excuse, hey, the bad lighting or the wind blew, the train drove by and honked, an airplane flew over. When something bad happens at the Grand, you're running so many dogs or over so many dogs run over such a long period of time. Something in there is not going to work out for you. You're going to get a dog that turned, or the sun is in the wrong spot, or there's a shadow in there. So going back to the idea of the Grand, that dog, if that dog is ready for the Grand, if it's a Grand dog, throw those excuses out the window and get it done. So a lot of the nerves that I very first had have left now, just because I've been doing it enough times, and our group has done such a good job on preparing for it. But I would say experience.
Yeah, our group is brutal.
Yeah, experience has helped me the most going through the Grand. And not that I envy a guy running 20 dogs. I don't know if I ever want to run 20 dogs in the Grand, because it's brutal. It's a mind game. But experience at the line, whether it's a weekend finish test, a weekend master test, or it's the Grand, that experience is the thing that's going to carry you the most. And don't get me wrong, good mentors, good training group, that all helps. Well-prepared dog is probably gonna ease your nerves the most. When you know your dog is peaking, it's going into the Grand, it's ready to run the Grand, you've done everything you can, that puts a lot of nerves at ease. When you're sitting there looking at this test and you're saying, hey, if my dog has a great day, a good day, we just don't know, we can't have anything bad go on, but my dog is very capable of doing this. That'll take care of a lot of those nerves. It's how you train, and Chris says it all the time. How do you prepare for the Grand? I prepare for the Grand all year long. You know what I mean? That's Chris is saying. Every training setup, there's a lot of truth to that. Whenever you're training your dogs to that level, and they're at that level, when you go to the Grand, it's just a matter of stepping up to the line and getting it done. And there's always those circumstances where you step up there with a dog that is a Grand champion and it doesn't get it done. Stuff happens. That's the Grand. It's hard for a reason. It's tough. It's tough.
You know, and Ryan, to answer to your question about the nerves, and Eric, and like Eric said, it's walking to the line and putting yourselves in those pressure situations over and over and over and over. And what people have got to understand is whether you're an amateur or smaller pro or learning or just starting to learn, you know, I'll go to a master test, a double master test with 35 dogs running a double master. I'll walk to the line 130 times a weekend. I mean, a weekend, which is more than an amateur will do in their entire life. So you've got to get line time. You've got to get line time. You have to get up there on the line, and you've just got to run. And I see some pros though, you know, that they've been pros for 20 plus years, and they're a nervous wreck. I'm not so much that anymore. I used to be real nervous. You really can't tell, I don't think, if I'm nervous or not. But if you're not a little bit nervous, then something's wrong. I personally feed off of that nervousness just a little bit. It sharpens me. It gives me more concentration, and I honestly embrace those nervous or those tough situations. I embrace that. I need that in my life. I kind of need that chaos, and I've been like that my entire life. But and another thing you've got to on your nerves, you've got to slow way down. So when you are starting to get nervous, that's when you start making mistakes. If you let the nervous situation override your comfortability or your confidence, if you let that overtake your confidence and emotions, that's when you start making mistakes, and that's when you start speeding 100%. Up, and you start thinking. And once you start speeding up, it's over. I can't tell you how many times I've sat in a holding blind, whether it be at the Grand, the Master Dash, or a weekend test, a qual, or whatever, and I can watch the wheels fall off, and then it's over. I can see it coming from a guy in front of me and sitting in the holding blind, and you know, like, here it comes, and then the whistle starts getting faster and faster and faster, and then it's over. So when the more nervous you are, I like to really slow down and concentrate. I mean, literally slow way down. If you think you're going slow, go slower. And worry about picking up the go bird. I literally break it down. I break it down bird by bird by bird. Literally pick up the go bird. Okay, got that done. Pick up the second bird. Got that done. Pick up the third bird. Okay, got that done. Now slow down, breathe. Where's the blind at? What are the pitfalls of the blind? And what I like to do when I get nervous, I like to look at a blind, especially a really, really hard blind, whether it be a water blind or whatever, and I break that down into thirds. Okay, you got the first third, the second third, and the last third. So now you say, okay, I got to run this first third of this blind like this. I don't look at the entire blind, because if you look at the entire blind, your nerves, especially if it's a big water blind or a big technical water blind, if you look at the entire blind, and Elliot, we've talked about this, and Eric knows all about this, about breaking these blinds down. If you start breaking these blinds down into 3 little blinds, and you just win each little blind, those big blinds, you're not so nervous anymore. Right? So you slow way down, you simplify the test, and you break the test down into pieces. And you just got to win every single little piece. And if you don't win a certain piece, don't let your emotions get the best of you and start speeding up. Because once you speed up, it's over. It is absolutely over. And let's just say it's not going the way you want it to go. Don't let the judges see that. Because you know what? It may be worse in your eyes than theirs. But if you start flailing around and you start getting really nervous, then you look really, really bad, which in turn, it's just human nature. They look at the dog, the dog must not be as good as they think, not doing as well as they thought he was. It just all looks bad. So you just stand up there calm, cool, collective, act like that's what you wanted to happen. And if it's not, don't worry about it. Just start winning each individual segment of the test. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
So when you're nervous, you calm way down.
That's great. Yeah, great point. I will tell you, now here we are with flaws. I'm not perfect like Chris at the Grand. When I start making mistakes or if I start losing dogs at the Grand, it is you hit it on the head. It is the speed that's starting to come into play in my head. My dog gets in that tough spot, and I need that money cast, and I give it that. I should sweat it a little bit. let it change its mind and cast it. Well, all of a sudden, I blow that whistle. I give that cast. My dog makes a bad.
Let me interrupt you. Let me interrupt. Let me interrupt you, Eric. Talk to everybody about sweating the dog out. Explain to that right there. What you just said. Let the dog sweat it out. Explain to everybody who's listening when you say that.
So when a dog is running a blind, you blow a whistle, it turns around and looks at you. That dog, a well enough trained dog, is already aware of its surroundings. Say you're running like a down the shore water blind and it just got out. Well, that dog might have got suction from the land side. So it's sitting there and it's looking, the land side, it's on its right side. So it's looking over its right side, going back to that old fall where you can't fault the dog. It just had success. It just picked up a bird there. So that dog is showing you it's going to go back to the right side. That's the wrong side. You need to be back in the water on the left side. So the dog sits there and it's showing you signs. Hey, it's leaning a little bit to the land side. It's looking over to the land side. Well, you're literally just letting that dog sit there. You're not moving. You're staying still at the line. You're not giving any whistles. It's like a staring competition until this dog changes its mind. So that dog is sitting there and all of a sudden it starts sweating. I mean, it's thinking to itself, okay, he's not giving me permission to suck into this landslide, to go back to that where I just had success from. So the dog it's thinking, Jobman's, your whole entire program is on creating a thinking dog. And that could have its own podcast. But so that dog's sitting there thinking, and all of a sudden it starts thinking, okay, I need to be back in the water. That's what I've been trained to do when I've been here. I've gotten a correction. Until I get back into the water, and that dog starts looking over its water side, and it starts showing you that it's gonna get into the water side, or if nothing else, it just quits looking over to the land side. And that's when you finally give your cast. Very long explanation to what you're watching from the dog right there. One of the best things I ever learned from you is how to read these dogs. It goes way beyond just sweating a dog, but sweating a dog is just giving the dog the time to change its own mind. If you're not going to give it a cast,
if you cast
and give it different options. Yeah.
And what you're trying to say is, in training, let's just say you blow the sit whistle and you cast your average time is about every 2 seconds. You do 1,001, 1,002, you cast. Sweating the dog is you don't cast in 2 seconds. You wait for 4 or 5. And they start thinking, they start getting nervous. Like, I'm not supposed to be here. And hopefully your dog doesn't panic and auto cast off into up the hill, because then you're done if that happens. But sweating the dog and don't blow another sit whistle if you need to. I mean, it's already sitting. Tweet, blow another whistle and sweat the dog out. Then he starts sweating out. Then they start getting nervous, like, I'm not supposed to be up here. And that's what you're talking about, is sweating the dog out. And if you're nervous at the test, you don't let yourself do that. You're not letting the dog sweat it out. You're literally speeding up so fast that it's just a train wreck. So Ryan, I don't know if we answered your question, but handling of the nerves is, I think some people are confident type people that handle those situations really well and have, in their most life, and some people are not. If you're not, you need lots of line time. Good line time. I'm not talking junior. I run 15 junior dogs. That don't mean crap. I'm talking get up to run master, run finished, throw your head in on the ring on the Grand or the Master National. And the more line time that you have, the better off you are. And plus, if you have a pro around you, which, Brian, I think you are right now, but if you have one that's, a really, really successful one that's bigger, that has a lot of dogs, have them sit behind you and literally pick you apart like I did Eric when Eric was younger. That's stress in itself right there. So you get putting yourself in high-stress situations all the time. I think you're better off handling when it comes to that. And hey, I've been here before. I've succeeded. It ain't that big a deal.
Yeah, preparedness. Luck favors those who are prepared. And when you walk to that line with a dog that is prepared, it'll throw a lot of those nerves out. Now, there's still, no matter what, there's nerves. But when you walk up there with a good dog, it's going to ease you immensely. It's going to help a lot.
And another thing about nerves, too, is quit listening to the outside noise. Get in your bubble, do your thing. I know you probably will have clients there or not clients there or whatever you've got. Shut them out. and I'm not trying to be mean to people, but do not let the clientele or dog owners dictate your speed, dictate bad decisions. Get them out of your head. They'll talk to you when it's over. Because if you let them dictate what's happening and they meet you offline, what happened there? What happened there? Let me think about it. I mean, if you let that happen, then your nerves, they should be sitting in the gallery in the stands cheering on their kid running around the bases, not coaching.
Yeah.
So tune out the outside noise, get in your bubble, and I always said it, control the situation as much as you possibly can.
Yeah. Add a little side note to that. Not only, ignore those people, but start leaning on those people that have more experience than you there. You know what I mean? I can't tell you how many times our group has walked off the line. Hey, you want to be on the left side of this tree, or hey, see that little bush out there? You want to be, man, listen to those and be there. Don't, if somebody's telling you that's just ran the blind, that you better be on the left side of this bush or you're going to be in trouble. Get there. Fight that dog there, and lean on those guys that have more experience than you. And I am blessed. Like I said, I run between the Chris's a lot, and I run with Red. We're always talking back and forth between each dog. That helps a lot when you got great guys.
And it's not always, and Elliot, it's not always nice. Like, I've walked up to Eric before, and he's walked up to me, and he's like, man, what is your deal? You're handling like shit today. Like, I don't know. It's like, you better get it together. I ain't kidding you. And like, we call each other out because we all want to succeed. Our training group, we're all such good friends. We all want to succeed and see each other do well. And if we're not doing well and we're making bad decisions because our head isn't in the game, we call each other out. I can't tell you how many times we called each other out on that deal. So
yeah, that hurts. That almost hurts worse than losing a dog. if
I mean, Chris and I are back there. What the hell?
Yeah, that hurts.
Okay, so that's about your nerves. Eric, give us, if you were to pick three things, you're an amateur coming into the Grand, right? I know we've got to work on everything. We've got to work on controlled healing and all. We got to do all that stuff. What are three things, if an amateur with limited time is going to the Grand, give us the three big things that they need to work on? The top three.
Tough marks. Tough marks is always.
Like what do you mean tough? Distance, visibility.
Tough to get to. I don't care about distance. Tough to get to and tough to find. In training, we always talk, young dogs, they need an easy to get to, easy to find mark. It might be across, your lawn, that is success. As these dogs get to the Grand, you better have tough to get to, tough to find. Just cause you can get there, doesn't mean you're going to find it, because it's put in a spot where it's hard to find. And the other, it's really, really hard to get to. So just tough marks. I don't care if it's a 20-yard little check down bird in itself that can be extremely tough after you just punched out and picked up a 150-yard mark. You come back and they got this little bitty bird tucked in the cattails at 20 yards on the downside of a slope that goes into the lake, where your dog is going across that area and it's just punching up out of there. That bird is hard to pick up. That is a tough to get to, tough to find mark, plain and simple. So that's one. It's easy to be, broad and say blind work. But your blinds better be immaculate. If you're casting into the wind, change your direction is a big one. Something I work on very hard before I go to the Grand, what I call the last cast, that money cast, wherever you need it, whether, you're running it down the shore and that last little bit it's kind of that gray area, whether you should be in or out, and your dog steps two steps to the right and now it's out, and you dang well know that's too far off the line, and now you give that cast to get back in the water, and that dog scallops that and stays kind of in the running water. It seems like is an automatic knock. You want to get rid of that cast. When you give them that cast, they better get belly wet. You want them to take a really nice last cast across that water and kind of show good change of directions. I'm willing to get back in. I like that cast. I always have. And the dogs and the guys that are asking to get that cast, I feel like just have better grands. That's a more biddable dog. That's a dog that's a team player. That's a well-trained dog. That last cast is very meaningful in training, but the reason why it's meaningful in training is because it's going to come up at the grand where if they miss that last cast, you're done. You're past it. You've gone into a danger zone. You're not in a good position to recover. So I like to concentrate on that last cast. You need to give me this cast right now. And that goes back to kind of where you were going with that a while ago, Chris. A lot of people get nervous because they know that's their last cast, so they do it really quickly. So not only does the dog need practice on it, handlers need practice on it. So that's putting yourself in that stressful situation and pulling yourself down, saying, whoa, let's hang on a second, take a breath. Okay, give my cast nice and slow. And when that dog takes it, it's beautiful. And that will get you, in my opinion, through a lot of blinds at the grand. The third thing, it overall work. I mean, it's I'm going to kind of lean back on a little bit what you said. Whenever the work doesn't look good, it doesn't look good to everybody, so if you can get in there and your blinds are crispy, your marks are crispy, when the dogs have faults, maybe they're not just going to run over there and just jam that mark. They're not going to front foot that mark. But everything else has been crispy. The judges are seeing this picture, and so are we as handlers. We're seeing this overall crispy picture where this dog has done such good things on all these other things. Maybe it doesn't stick out in their mind where they're going to judge it as harsh. I think that's human nature. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
If you have a bad mark, you're going to have a bad mark. But I'm talking about where you're on that teeter-totter. Well, was that a really good mark? Did the dog get in there and hunt the area and find it, or did the dog really just stumble in there and then find it? When you have really good work on the other two marks, well, you can kind of get that dog in there and do that. But if your line manners were all over the place, well, now all of a sudden that mark looks worse because it's the accumulation of everything. So you can make one dog can run that mark one way, and the other dog that sits at the line and is just steady as a rock. And then the next dog does that same mark, the exact same mark, it struggles on a little bit, but that dog was creeping all over the line. That dog is going to get hit on it. So the overall crispiness of your dog, the cleanliness of your run and how your dog operates and is a team player, that matters a lot. So if you can clean up that
smooth
sloppiness, it helps. Yes, exactly. When you're smooth
looks good.
Looks
Herky jerky looks bad. Smooth looks good, and getting back to some of that points. And when you're preparing for the grand, everybody, and I know there's a lot of people that are guilty of this, I see it all the time, is when you're training with your group or you're by yourself or whoever you're training with, everybody wants to drive home and, pound their chest and pump their fists and, drive home and thinking how good they are, how good their dog is. And when you're training, everybody's trying to win the blind. Like literally, we're going to win this blind. We're going to run it, especially if let's just say it's a down the shore water blind. You have to put your dogs in trouble to teach them to get out of trouble, because you at the grand are going to get in trouble. It is going to happen. And Eric's talked about that last money cast. Unless you've taught your dog how to take that last money cast, you're not going to get it. And what I mean by that is, let's just say you're running down the shore water blind, which Eric keeps bringing that up, so do I. That's the one. If you were to practice one water blind for the grand, it's a down the shore water blind. If you can run a down the shore water blind, you can run about any blind. But let's just say you run a down the shore water blind and you've never let your dog get its feet on, land underneath of its feet or get out or anything like that. You're just saying, I'm running down the shore, I'm running down the shore, I'm running down the shore. But I like to get my dogs in trouble. What I mean by that is put them in that water where their feet are, their lands underneath their feet, or they've had to get out, and now you've let them get in that trouble spot. And Eric's talked about, you need that last money cast. You need to teach the dog how to give you that last money cast. And you've got to, in training, you've got to look at, hey, I know where this blind's at, but what would happen if I got in trouble on this blind? Where would the dog go? Put the dog in that situation and teach it to get out. And too many people are afraid to do that in training because they want to drive home thinking how great their dog is. They don't want to drive home going, oh, my God, my dog got out of the water today and I couldn't get him back in. You've got to find all the chinks in the armor and start plugging the holes and filling the gaps. If you don't do that, you might as well not even enter. Because it's not going to go there's very, very few dogs that are going to go through the grand squeaky clean with zero faults that I can count in my career 150 times where, hey, if this 9-time grand champion didn't give me that last cast, he'd be an 8-time grand champion. And there's those times in history or in times in that dog's life that you've taught that dog to get out of trouble. It saved a pass or a fail. So,
yeah. Chris, I want to go back and just quickly hit something.
Okay.
Let me steal a second here. Going back to Ryan's question a little bit. When I'm bringing a dog up through, started, season, finish, when that dog is a pre-HRCH dog, a pre-finished dog, it doesn't have its title yet. I am in there to pass a test. Don't get me wrong. I'm in there to do whatever means. It's my job. It's my job to pass this dog. So I'm going to take whatever I can to get this dog through this test. Okay. The day this dog on Saturday, if it's on Saturday, he becomes an HRCH, I'm going to run that dog a little bit differently on Sunday. So I'm going to start practicing those situations, just what you're talking about. Okay, I got my title. Now this dog's aspirations, this owner's aspirations is to have a grand dog. This is working on the dog, that money cast, and this is working on my nerves and my stress factor. Okay, so Sunday rolls around and I'm going to put my dog on purpose. I'm going to put my dog in a tight situation in a test and get it out of that situation, because passing a finish test it stopped being my goal. That when I pass a finish test, it doesn't matter anymore. I don't get to be a 13-time HRCH. What my thought process is now is I'm building this dog. My next goal, all I did is build an HRCH Master Hunter. My next goal is I'm building this dog into a grand dog. Yes. So now I'm going to put this dog in a test situation. I'm going to put it in a tight spot, and I'm going to ask it to get out of it. I care less if I fail. I don't care. What I'm working on.
Let me interrupt you here.
Those mechanics. Quick. Yeah, go ahead.
As an outsider looking in, as an owner of this dog that you're going to do this with, you need to also have the understanding is you need to see the forest through the trees. So Eric and or I or Chris or whoever is going to put your dog on a weekend test in a tough situation to see it get out. You've got to put your ego away and accept if that dog doesn't get out, you're not going to get a ribbon. Because, like Eric said, HRCH is now not the goal. The grand's the goal, right? So we're doing a little bit of training and preparing and proofing is actually what we're probably doing more than anything to see if your dog can get out of that hole. So now as an owner, you need to put your ego away, put your big girl panties on, and accept the fact that, hey, I didn't get out of there because my trainer is doing something to help my dog, not to waste my entry fee money. So as an owner, you need to think about that. I think that's very, very important to let people know what the process is on something like that.
Yep.
It's good stuff.
Okay.
That's all really interesting.
Yeah. I think another thing.
I just got passionate about that.
I know it. And another thing at the Grand too is I think, to me, I see a lot of people make gun handling mistakes. Shooting at the wrong time, spinning around. The gun can make or break you. If you're a good gun handler at the Grand, you can save your dog. And if you're a bad gun handler at the Grand, you're going to fail your dog. And it's not the dog's fault. It's all your fault. You shot at the wrong time. You didn't shoot at the top of the arc. You didn't, because a lot of times at the Grand now is just seeing the damn marks are hard to see. So handling the gun smoothly is a huge deal for me, I think, too. You see guys that are really good at it and can really, really save their dogs.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I wouldn't even brought that up. It's been ingrained in all through my dog training, evolution of me as a trainer, I've just been raised with good gun handling. So I don't even think about that, but that is a 100% key factor. You can mess a dog up. Whether you're on the working dog or the honor dog, a honor dog shooting at an untimely time can throw off a working dog, and that is extremely unfair to that working dog. So,
well,
yes,
you can fail a working dog in a heartbeat. You can fail a working dog in a heartbeat as the honor dog, and what we mean by that is let's just say the first mark out's 165 yards, or the second, it would be like the second mark out's 100. And anyway, that mark comes out. And the honor dog should be trying to time the same shot as the working dog. If the honor dog shoots first, then that dog looks over towards the honor dog and misses the entire mark. Now it's pow, pow, and the honor dog shoots first. The dog looks over to the honor dog or in that direction. The mark comes out. The working dog tries to shoot. You got to understand something. As an honor dog, you're there to make your dog sit there. You're not trying to win this damn thing, right? So shoot when the honor dog or the working dog shoots. If you don't, your timing can absolutely destroy the working dog over there, especially on marks that are hard to see, skyline, that whole thing. That will destroy you in a heartbeat.
Yes.
Anything else, Eric, on the rant? I know we're kind of covering it kind of quick. I want to get to some questions.
It's tough.
It is hard. And I would probably try to practice marks in the tree line, not skylining as much, because that seems to be the deal in the last 3 or 4 years of the Grand is, and I don't think they're doing it on purpose. I just think it's where they're having it, and the terrain and the country that they're having it. And I really have to try hard for my dogs to see marks in trees, because where I live, I just don't have any. So my dogs see skyline marks all the time, where when I get to the Grand, I got to really work on it for dogs to see marks in trees. And if they're not seeing marks in trees, I use the little white ribbon on them if I have to. And if your dog doesn't see the marks, don't freak out. I'm going to tell you, I can't tell you how many dogs I've passed on Grands that dogs didn't see marks and I lined them to them. And we've talked that in previous podcasts, but the go as sent, line them up and kick them off and hope for the best. And they're not going to see every single mark. So in training, work on that as well. Like if they may not see every mark, and line them up, kick them off, and teach them to go straight. Because I'm going to tell you, you're going to need that.
Well, let's move on to some questions. That sound good?
Yeah, let's do it.
Is it okay? Is it all right if I just go straight down the list?
Let's do it.
Okay. I'm going to go straight down the list here. Now, these questions came from the Facebook group, and one thing that would really help Chris with these questions is when you pose a question, make sure and be specific about the level of the dog, because the answer to the question may be different based upon the background and the level that you have. So let's be real specific with those. So on this first one, I'm going to add level of the dog to this one.
And I'm going to let Eric answer this first one.
Okay. This is Ralph Bartley, and his question is, what are some ways to get bigger changes in direction when casting in the water? And I'm going to say this dog is like a finished level dog. Maybe he has his HRCH, maybe he doesn't, but he's right in that finished level.
I'm going to be cliche here, but practice. If you don't practice that cast, you're not going to get it. You're not going to go into a test and think, hey, just because I run to the left faster means my dog's going to take more of a cast. It doesn't happen without practice. Drill work. I call it skills and drills here at the kennel. You may set up a down the shore water blind and let that dog understand, hey, there is a destination pile down there. Run that down the shore. Let that dog be successful at running it down the shore. Comes back, you kick it back off on the same line. And instead of being right there, you have another pile off 20 yards, 40 yards to the farther water side of this mark, this destination on this down the shore. And you make that dog give you that cast. And whenever it doesn't give you that cast, you recall it, you put it back in that same spot, and you ask for that cast again. Got to be fair to the dog. You don't want to give a dog too much pressure because it's going to do funny things. And once you start getting that cast, just like a cheating single or something, you want more. You want more change in training than you're going to get in a test. If that dog, gives you we're going to be extreme here, but a 75-degree angle change in training, you're going to get a 45 in the test. So with practice, you're going to get that cast. And practice it in different ways. Just because you're practicing it on a flat, square corner doesn't make it always right. Sometimes you want to be on the dam and the cast them, back, maybe get that big cast into the water off the dam. So they're not only, just cutting the corner, but they're running up the dam. They can't see it. There's multiple ways you can do that. Into the wind. You may end up wanting that same water cast, but you're doing it into the wind where the wind is blowing from the water into that corner. So that's another element of that cast that's gonna make that angle less. So if you can start getting that dog to give you big angles in training and big angles when casting into the wind, you're going to get that in a test. But if you plan to show up on test day and to, I don't know, Band-Aid the dog because you do something different on test day, it ain't going to work. You got to practice that. And I'm not going to be so insane not to say that you need to practice that often. It doesn't matter if you got a grand dog or a dog trying to get a finish title or a master title. You better be practicing that cast with that dog routinely or you're not going to get it.
And let me add a little bit to this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me add a little bit to this. If your dog doesn't tread water worth a damn, you're in deep trouble. Dogs that tread water really, really good will cast for you much better if they're stationary. The dogs that are, you blow a sit whistle and they turn, they start drifting left or drifting right or coming into you, those dogs are really hard to get a change of direction because they're already moving. So hopefully your dog treads water real well and you've done all the steps to do that. A dog that treads water really well will help you immensely to do that. And slow down. Sweat the dog out a little bit. Slow down. Sit there. The dog treads water a little bit. Cast. And keep the cast. If you're working on angles, keep the cast literal. So we're talking about a finish level dog. If you want a 30-degree angle, give a 30-degree angle. Don't give a 45 to get a 20. That's not how to do it. If you want a 45, you get a 45. You stop them, recall them, cast on the 45. You need to be very diligent about that.
Okay, let's move on to the next one.
Drill work.
This is from Phil Holting. He says, when running cold blinds, when do you start giving corrections for mistake and how do you apply them? And I interpret this as you're just getting into cold blinds. So you're starting them for the first time. And at what point in that process do you start giving corrections and how do you apply those corrections?
Well, hopefully, I'll jump in on this one a little bit. Hopefully, you're already starting to give the dog corrections if you ran pattern blinds. You've given your dog corrections for maybe slow whistle sits or not changing direction. They're using indirect pressure, that sort of thing. You're not just starting to give corrections on cold blinds just because they're cold blinds. They should understand what the corrections actually are before reaching cold blinds. Maybe your corrections are using attrition. Stop the dog, recall a dog back, recast. Maybe it's a combination of attrition and indirect pressure. Maybe it's just indirect pressure. I guess I don't understand the question because this dog should have been getting corrections and learning how to deal with corrections in pattern blinds and that sort of thing. So if you have a young transition level dog, and you're starting cold blinds, your corrections aren't going to be you're not going to nitpick the dog so much. You're looking for major change of direction in that sort of, phase. If they're more of a finish level dog, you're looking for corrections on a literal casting. So don't just wait for do corrections on starting cold blinds. They should have learned how to deal with some of those corrections, leading up to all that.
Okay. Let's move to the next one. This is Stormy Crick, and this is a conversation that Chris, you had on Facebook with Stormy. I'm gonna shorten this down a little bit and cut to it. This dog is kind of right at the beginning seasoned level dog. The dog is working multiple birds at once, and he begins to swap or shop. If it is determined that the trainer has missed a detail in the process, so the trainer's like, oh, I think I messed up in the process and forced to pile, do they need to go back through all the steps of forced to pile, or what? How should they handle that?
Well, I got a video from Stormy. He's not talking about shopping in the pile. And like when a dog shops a pile, it means, you know, grabbing multiple bumpers and trying to come back with multiple.
He's talking about a switch.
I got a video from, he's talking about switching on like a diversion. And I got a video from him when his dog was swimming in the water, and he did an okay job with it. Stormy, I would recommend. I watched your video and completely think they stopped, and you gave him 20 good boys. I'm literally good boy. You gave him 20 good boys. He didn't hear you after the first one, so relax on the praise. But the dog was swimming back in the water. He threw a bumper to the side. The dog left it alone and kept coming in, which did a nice job. So he's talking about switching on a diversion. And what you need to do on that is, let's just say the dog is coming back with a mark at 10 o'clock, right? And you want to throw a bird to 3 o'clock. So if that dog is, you don't want that dog to switch. So if that dog switches, it's got to run past or through you to get to that bird. So you can stop it. That's how you introduce that. I watched him throw his bumper 2 feet from the dog's head, which the dog didn't even switch, which was great. But I mean, it could have been disastrous. Now, if the dog does switch and it was in the water, there's no way to stop that. So work on land. So the dog's coming in at 10 o'clock, throw it over to 3 o'clock. So it's got a big window there. Now, once you get better at it, then you know, if the dog's coming in at 12 o'clock, you can throw it at 1 o'clock. I mean, you can really test it. But when you're first starting out, keep the distances real wide, so the dog has to kind of go through you to do all that.
All right. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. This is Thad Moore. He says, Chris gave an example of a dog in the latest podcast that showed some anxiety around angle entries due to you overworking the issue. I'm guilty as charged on the exact same thing with the same symptoms. This dog is explosive on watermarks. It's even more an issue with angle entries when running left to right. If you had to go back and address this, would you have done anything different than you already did in, day out training? I've gone to pattern blinds on water. I've seen some success, but then weeks later, it would show up again, just as you described.
I remember that podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And
Chris, what dog was
the thing I would have changed, Parker, you don't remember, she was before your time. I got in a big fight with her in the tech pond in the front of my house on an angle entry. And to that day, she ended up being a grand champion master hunter. But if she didn't see if she saw an angle entry on a blind, not a mark, but a blind that she did not like, and it brought her back, she had PTSD from it, she'd no-go me almost every single time. Even if I sent her on her name. But if I could look back, I never would let that happen. You know, but hindsight's 20/20. There is nothing I could have done in training from her entire career that would have fixed that. I tried the same thing with him. I've tried pattern blinds. I've tried all that. But you got to understand something. A dog at that level, master level or more, pattern blinds aren't going to work. That's a known destination. It's really, really easy for them. Like they literally just run to the same spot over and over and over. The only way to make that better is to go to a different location and work on those angle entries. Now, one thing I did do with her is if I saw it in training where she was getting a little bit weird, I would take a bumper and I would throw it. And I still do this day. I still do that. If I see a dog getting weird on an angle entry, I still do this because I don't want to get in a fight. Because what ends up happening, one of two things. The dog no-goes you or it dives in the water, straight into the water, and you can't fix it. I'm telling you, once that shit starts, that is so hard to fix because they know it's almost an avoidance. They just jump in the water to get away from the stressful situation. So I just when I see that starting to happen, instead of going no here and resending and no here, it just gets worse and worse and worse, and they just jump in the water. So I just take a bumper and I just throw it down that line that I want, and I make them sit there and I throw them down that line I want. I say back. I let them go in and get it, come back, and then I run the blind. I am done getting in that fight of that. And now I'm really, really conscious of our young dogs when we do that, I'm really conscious of our young dogs is let's not get into that fight. Let's teach that in pattern blinds when they're young. That way they've got pretty good experiences in it, because what ends up happening, just probably like Eric's dogs, is once they feel pressure, they jump in the water. And it's almost impossible to get that angle entry anymore.
I was literally sitting here and I actually jotted it down to come back to on when fixing this. You're either going to get a dog to jump and fat, or you're going to get it to no-go you. And I mean, you hit that on the head. And like Chris said, I am a big fan of doing that. Not 100% sure we started that when I was out at FLK, but like, even if I'm in the middle of a setup and that dog comes back and I got this, I did angle entry watermarks today, and I get this dog that kind of gives me that hesitation. You already know you got a problem. You ain't even sent the dog. It comes back and it already shows you, man, pick up a bump or pick up something. And if it's close enough, go throw it in the water on the line, send that dog, get it used to running that line, and then come back and run that mark. You can go backwards trying to fix that. If you do it wrong, especially if you try to put too much pressure on fixing that, you will literally get a dog that runs straight for the water and jumps in.
And I'm going to tell you, once that starts, it's so hard to stop and fix. It's just because to that dog's, in coming to that dog's defense, we've done nothing but get in the water, teach it to get in the water, get in the water, get in the water. And now when it starts feeling pressure, it's going to get in the water. And I've seen it happen 1,000 times, and I've done it. I don't do it anymore. But if to say the dog, you want that nice angle entry in, and it just jumps in the water to the right. Well, no, here, maybe with a nick, you put pressure on that dog, the next time it is jumping in the water. I'm talking as fast as possible. Even if you move up, it's jumping in the water. You're better off if that dog, you say back, and that dog jumps in the water, say, no, here, come here, take a bumper, throw it down the line that you want, and send it. And that dog, you teach that dog. Huh? And step up.
Close your distance, yeah.
Yeah, or close your distance.
That's a hard fix.
It's once that starts, it's so hard to fix. Because in their mind, they're just trying to be a good dog, which honestly, everybody's, they're just trying harder. No, they're not. It's actually an avoidance issue. They're avoiding the angle entry because it's mentally hard for them. So they just learn to jump in the water because that's a safe spot. It starts out as effort. It ends up being avoidance. So if that makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to the next one. This is from Robert Wisdom. It's about force fetch. It said, I listened to the podcast on force fetch, and you said something to the effect of that there would be an obvious sign of when the dog complies with the concept. Is this visible at each stage of the process? I'm currently in hold with the glove, and he fought like hell for 3 days and then just accepted hold. I'm following Freddie's program. Thank you.
I don't do hold with a glove. Eric, do you do hold with a glove?
Depending on the dog,
like your
got
hand.
a boy kinder right now, hold with a glove. Yes, sometimes.
I'm actually gonna let you do this question thing. So I don't do Freddie's deal where I put a glove on my hand and let them hold my hand. I never have. So Eric, you take this one.
I really want to know the answer to this question. When is the last time you were the one force fetching a dog?
It's been a while. I'm not gonna lie.
It's been a while.
I have helped force fetching a dog at times, and it's funny. I did it when Dane, everybody were there. You'd be like, I can't get the dog, and I go in there and I'm like, how do you do that? I'm like, I just do. But it's been a while since I went through all the entire way, but I have helped. So I can't hardly bend over.
I had to poke a little bit there, but boy, we got two different types of dogs here. You have a dog that you can get 100% compliance from. You have the dog that's going to show you, hey, I'm done with this step. Hey, I get it. That dog is, whether it's ear pinch, toe hitch, e-collar pressure, stick fetch, anything like that. That dog is going to show you signs that it is completed that stage. And what I mean by that is you're holding that dog back. You start introducing your fetch object, whether it's a bumper or a fetch tool or whatnot. But you're going to introduce that, and that dog is going to show you signs that it's ready to pick that up. It's going to lean forward. It's going to start looking at it. It's going to start almost breaking. It's going to go get that object. And then you got the dogs that you can't demand that perfection out of. They may not ever show you the sign they're ready to move on, outside of the fact that their attitude is not where it should be. When you get those dogs, quit worrying about 100%. You may go forward without getting 100% compliance, because that dog, you're taking some of the stress off that dog. You're kind of moving them through force fetch a little faster. Not the way any of us like doing things. We want to see that dog give us 100% and be a lock all the way through force fetch. But some dogs just kind of give you that 60%. Hey, I'm not going to give you 100%. I'm not going to just snatch that bumper out of your hand. You're going to have to give me pressure every single time to make me react to it. That's not the dog that we're wanting to, or not the results. But in all honesty, there's some dogs that are just going to give you that. So get what you can do. Get the reps you need and move on. Don't get stuck. And sometimes when you do that, and you could go back and you go ahead and e-collar or use the e-collar to force this dog. Now you go back and all of a sudden you introduce ear pinch. You're just kind of going back to touch it up or something. And that dog shows you that 100% compliance. So you got two different dogs. You got the ones that are really, really eager to do it, and they show you every single time that they're going to fetch on command. And then you got those dogs that are going to give you 60%, and they're going to give you an effort after you give them pressure. So you got to be careful what you're looking for there. And some dogs aren't going to give you that look that where they're going to do it. Move on and come back. Like I said, it's not what we all want to do, but that's the reality of dog training. They're not all going to give you that look. Chris?
100%. The dogs that you can lean on a little bit harder in force fetch, you can push, those dogs. The dogs that you can't, you better recognize those dogs too, because if you're force fetching multiple dogs, not every dog's the same, and you're going to ruin one if you read it wrong. But you'll see if the dog starts complying. You will read that compliance. It's and I don't do Freddie's deal with the glove, but if your dog is starting to comply now, that's great. Usually complying in force fetch is the dog is showing you more effort. The more effort the dog is giving you, the more compliance it's giving you.
Okay. Let's go on to this. I'm pretty sure this one is specifically for Chris. It's by Daniel Newman. Chris, how do you personally maintain such an amazing physical appearance while training so intently every day?
Well, Dan works for me now. He's one of our assistants, and it's really hard to do. I literally get up every morning, and I just, I piss excellence, and I get up every morning, and that's just kind of what I do. And Dan's lucky to be a witness of it every single day.
Oh boy.
All right.
Moving on. Nothing has changed.
Moving on to William Maggard. I believe this is a client of yours, Chris.
Oh, yeah.
Please discuss hard mouth behavior. Is it possible to reduce or eliminate hard mouth behavior in a mature dog? What training techniques during puppy stage are used to prevent or reduce this behavior? His dog is 8 years old. It was early trained by another trainer, and then Chris took it over and achieved grand champion MNR status.
Yeah, when this is Blitz. Blitz is bad to the bone. He's 3-time Grand Retriever champion, Master Hunter, MNR. And when we got Blitz, he likes to, when he comes into heel, he likes to squish the birds. And to stop that in a training, if he starts doing that, he's really high and excited. And I don't say hold, because he's doing it. He's holding. Too many people are doing that. I use indirect pressure on sit, and that usually will stop it really, really quick. And so in a test, I'll just say sit, and he'll quit. The higher he gets, the more excited he gets, the worse it is. Blitz is a really excitable dog. And I'll be quite honest with you, Bill. He was probably hunted too young and put in situations where he was too excited. That's always my analogy, the 16-year-old in a strip joint. He was a 16-year-old with a full pocket of $1 bills. And he was out hunting when he was probably not in enough control. And that probably started there in the hunting is what I'm guessing. Probably like teal, because everybody's got to get their dog to shoot teal for 3 days. And they probably started squishing teal or indoor doves, which are the worst thing you could probably do for a young dog. They just naturally mouth them. So a lot of that stuff is really hard to stop. You just have to control it. The biggest thing is like when they're puppies, I don't like them playing tug of war and all that stuff. I don't really care for that. But I think the young bird, the little birds, when they're too young, too excitable, I think they need to be more mentally mature. And as a handler and or a trainer, you have to recognize when that's happening and stop it. So I don't know if it started at his other trainer or when he was hunting or a combination of both. But when that stops, you need to take that excitement away from the dog until it more matures or you fixed it. And I guarantee you that probably started early in his life at his training, carried over into hunting season because he had to be hunted right away, I'm sure. And I know Blitz, he's super excitable and he's as good as it gets. But when he gets really excited, that's where it comes out. And I guarantee you that's where it started. So, Eric, what do you think?
I want to talk to you about two different things. I knew this question was coming, and I got to really thinking about this. I don't see a whole lot of hard mouth issues. Not saying it's my program, but do you working there at FLK? We didn't have a whole lot of hard mouth issues. Now, granted, we had a dog here or there. A lot of times they came in with that issue already. When a dog comes through your puppy program through all the way through a finished dog, have you seen, even outside of my time at FLK, have you seen very many hard mouthing problems that come up through your system?
No, we have not had a dog coming out of our kennel like that. We just don't let it happen. Our hard mouthing issues are dogs that are overexcited and they've came from somewhere else. And I think a lot of that situation is those dogs were put in those super situation. Deke was one of them. Blitz. They were started other places. I'm not blaming those other places, but I think they were put into really high, excitable situations that they were mentally not ready to handle and started chomping on birds and squishing birds and wasn't addressed right away. And addressing that right away is pulling them out of those situations. Our mouthing problems come from other places.
Yeah, you kind of hit it. And in my opinion, a mouthing problem is it's an excitement problem. You got dogs that bark, you got dogs that creep, you got dogs that whine, you got dogs that mouth birds. It's a release of excitement. When that dog comes back and you don't have the barker, but you got the cruncher. There's some Band-Aid fixes to that. But yeah, I think you're right. Coming up through our programs, and I'm sitting here trying to figure out when we're addressing that we never come up with that issue. And I can't say that, hey, this is the one certain thing that we do, that we don't get a bunch of hard-mouthed dogs, but I haven't noticed much of a problem with it.
No, I haven't either. They come from some other place. And like I said, it's putting dogs in situations they're mentally not ready for, and, or they're not force fetched correctly, and, or not force fetched at all, thrown into a dove hunting situation when they're 8 months old and they shouldn't be out there and they start mouthing on birds. Now we get them at 3.5 years old and we got to try to fix it. I mean, it's so hard.
You probably you probably nailed it down right there. Yeah.
I mean, and there's no reason. I mean, dove hunting and teal hunting are so hard on young dogs. They're so little, especially the super highly excitable dogs. They start squishing birds, and once that starts, it's so hard to fix. Oh my God, it's so hard to fix.
All right,
let's do Matt Ward's question real quick for Eric.
Okay. All right. Matt Ward asked specifically for Eric, what did you have to do to whip Jesse into shape?
I do not even have an answer for
Silence.
That hasn't happened yet. That's a work in progress, and that's going to be like that's going to be kind of like climbing Everest. Like you once you start, you better go. You may not reach the top. You got to come back down and try it again. That's going to be a pinnacle of my career whenever that does happen.
I assume he works for you.
Yeah, Jesse's one of my assistant trainers.
I do Walter Brown's now.
All right. We'll do Walter Brown's. Walter Brown's actually a friend of mine, lives in my area. He is trying to self-train his lab. His question is, how big does a field need to be for a dog to get significant practice on marking? Oftentimes I'm using a field that is at most 125 to 150 yards deep and the same wide. If throwing 100-yard mark, if throwing 100-yard mark is that field big enough to allow the dog to work on depth perception and true marking? Same question on the pattern blinds. How big, length, and width does the field need to be in order for it to be sufficient on those skills? He feels like he's running marks and blinds to the edge of the field, which makes it easier for the dog.
Well, depends on what kind of dog he's trying to build. If he's building just a gun dog, it's plenty big. If he's building a field trial dog, not even close. And
I know with his last dogs, he has definitely done some field trial stuff.
Like
he's
field trials?
No. I'm sorry, not field trial. He's in the AKC HRC group, so he's done some. I think his last dog was HRCH. I think
he needs to get a bigger field. I mean, you can do some rinky-dink, stuff there, for sure. But I wouldn't go there every day. Every day, that dog is going to know every nook and cranny of that field, and you need to move it up. But yeah, just move around. That field's big enough for most finish tests and most master stuff. But that dog is going to know every nook and cranny of that field. It will work for certain things, but you definitely need some different options.
Okay. Do we want to? I know we're kind of running. Do we want to hit a couple of Grant's questions?
Oh boy.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Eric. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask Chris, do you feel like if you had a significant amount of 150-yard fields, square, 150, do you feel like that is enough room to train a good finish dog? I absolutely do.
For sure. It can't be the same field though.
Yeah, I agree.
But I do definitely. Yeah. If you only had a 150 by 150 yard field and you had multiple fields, for sure that's big enough. For sure, because distance is distance. You can make a hard marking concept out of short marks. In most finish tests and/or master tests, let's face it, are going to be inside of 150 yards. So,
I think
but what's the cover like? If the cover is like if it's a mowed football field, then no, you need something different. But what kind of cover is in it too? If it's just got nice, good, knee length cover, that's plenty good. So,
all right. Do you want to hit a couple of Grant Hatch's questions here before we taper it off?
We better before he whines and cries.
Yeah, he's not going to be happy. We'll both.
Yeah, he'll be whining, and I'll get a message in the morning.
April 2nd, 2024, Grant Hatch becomes relevant.
Welcome to VCR.
All right. During the day-to-day training, what determines the order of dogs being trained on the truck?
Eric, you take this one and I'll answer it too. Me and you will answer both of them.
Okay. I probably do the same thing as Chris. I got my best dog in hole number 1, and it goes to my least experienced dog. Some days I start with the most experienced dog, and some days I start with the least experienced dog. It just depends on what I'm working on. And sometimes it doesn't matter at all. Sometimes I just walk out there and grab hole number 1. And a lot of times I do. I run my best dog first to kind of get a feel for the setup. and then kind of start adjusting from there. Or, if I'm going to run a big setup, oh man, hey, I tried to run this as a double. Maybe I need to run it as a single double because my first dog, which is my better dog, struggled on a little bit. So by the time I get to my more inexperienced dogs, they're going to need less of a setup. So sometimes I start with my best and with my most inexperienced for the fact that I'm trying to give everybody good work.
Yeah, and he learned that from me, so that's what I do. But I will tell you, leading up to the Grand, something that I do, and we should have talked about that maybe a little bit earlier, is I run all my dogs in my Grand order. I started that yesterday. So what I mean by that is like say so Peach, which is Grant's dog, is my first dog to run on the Grand, which is dog 5, I think, of the day. So I run her first. There's dew on the ground. There's no wind. The lighting conditions, because that's a lighting condition she's going to see, right? In the first series at least. So I run Peach, Indy, Shaker, Maverick, Charlie, Flash, Red. I run my Grand crew in that order right now. That's who I grab off first. But most days, hole 1 is held down by Flash. He's the first one to run. And I just go right down the line. That's kind of how I do it.
How do you determine the day's setup is second question.
My go first for you.
Depends on what we're doing. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah. So sometimes I think that there might have been a little bit more than that, like on a test week or something. My setup determines on where my dogs are at as a whole, and sometimes as an individual. If I got a dog that just is trash at a certain skill, I may go out there and set that setup with that dog in my head. That's usually not the case. Usually you have a group of dogs that struggle with this concept, or, let's do running by a short bird to go punch out and get a long one. So I may set that up for that one dog. And more than likely, hopefully it's a group of dogs that I'm working that with. If I'm struggling on an idea concept, I set up for that. If I'm leading up to a test, I'll cheat it a little bit. I'm going to possibly Wednesday, Thursday, I'm going to kind of pre-throw my dogs possibly what I've seen at that area before. If I'm going to a place that's real hilly, I'm going to go, I'm testing on a place that's real hilly that weekend. I'm going to go test in some really hilly terrain. If I'm going to go to a place that has a tech pond that we could possibly rerun it on, I'm going to use Wednesday and Thursday to go train on a tech pond. I'm going to match my ideal test for that weekend, or at least kind of get the concept of it going around. So when I'm setting up, I factor in different things. And sometimes today, I literally ran off a gravel road into a great piece of water, but I was limited to running off that gravel road into that water because of the weather. We got 2.5 inches of rain last night. I wasn't pulling off the dirt or pulling off into the dirt, or else I'd have been buried and had a tractor pull me out. So today's setup was literally dictated by yesterday's weather. So setups can be dictated.
And I'll let Eric talk. Eric's talking about his setups. Eric's talking about his setups for getting ready to run a test. So I'll talk about a setup, just a normal kind of how I do it. So let's just say Monday I ran a double, and my main thing I was working on was a short check down bird. So let's say Tuesday I run a delayed triple. I'm going to make my long memory bird, I'm going to make it a long punch bird. So the day before I worked on a check down, the next day I'll work on a long memory bird, and vice versa. Or maybe one day I worked on, holding the hill, so it all depends on what I'm doing. I don't like to do, when I do my set, and I always do with a wind too. I always try to put the wind at my back, or a slight crossing wind. And if I have a crosswind, I'm 9 times out of 10, I'm going to throw birds into the wind to teach the dog to stay on the right side of the gun, fight the factor of the wind and or the hill, and not backside those guns. So it all depends on the terrain I've got and what we're trying to work on. But very seldom do I do like triples after triple after triple. If I've done a double one day, a double the next day. The next day I'll probably do singles. The next day after that I'll probably do a delayed triple, something like that. So, but if I like I said, if I'm working on a short memory bird, then I'm gonna, the next day will be a long middle punch bird or something like that.
Yeah, I'm going to interject here just because I do something a little bit differently than when I was there, Chris. Sometimes I get like a theme week. So if I'm going to go run a short check down bird, I may run it in a very skills and drills type of setup on Monday. And on Tuesday, I may run it more with an HRC duck call, gun over their head. Wednesday, I may run that in an AKC setup, like a master test, booms out in the field, but my theme is the same. I'm changing it up, don't get me wrong, but my theme is that short bird or, a hip pocket throughout the whole week. And as I progress the weeks, I kind of just flip my dogs back and forth just because I'm working on it in multiple ways, in multiple settings. I may even throw a white coat setup in there where my check down bird is not a true check down bird for a hunt test dog because it's at 100 yards, but it may be coming off a 250 yard mark. So I try to hit those concepts in different ways. I do that actually quite a bit where I run my dogs through that concept or the theme of the week.
My ADHD will not let me work on the same theme over and over and over and over. I've got to do something different. That's my fault.
All right. I've got one question I'd like to throw in there on this last one. So we are entered in our first AKC hunt test down at, I think it's Jayhawk. Is that what it's called? Down there on Wichita in 2 weekends from now. And so this is our first AKC test. We're moving over from HRC. I understand the basic differences, but are there any little nuanced differences that I should be aware of jumping over to AKC?
Wait for them to call your number. You think that's funny?
No, I don't. No, expand.
So in AKC, once you and you can wear black. Black is probably the preferred color. Don't worry about dressing head to toe in camo. They're not camo Nazi down there. So, I would wear something black that's highly visible. You can use your hat to cast with all those things. But the main thing is once you get Georgie all set up, right? Let her see the field. Let her get it set up. Once you say sit, and then once you call for the birds, you can't talk to her again. You can't say another thing until they say your number and or they say dog. Once they say that, you can release her to go on your marks, but you have to wait for that. It's not like HRC where when the bird hits the ground, you can send them.
Okay, so give me a little more on exactly when can I talk exactly and when can I not talk? Because I'm not 100% clear on that.
When you're you just walk up to the line. They'll say dog to the line. And when you walk up to the line, you can say sit. Make her sit down at the line, grab your gun.
You can say heel as you're going.
Correct. When you're walking to the line, just like a normal HRC test, get them in there, get them comfortable, settle them in. But once you call for you will call for the birds with your hand, not a duck call. With your hand, you'll call for the birds. That means you're ready. Once you've done that, you cannot talk to her again until they say your number.
Okay. And that comes after the marks.
Correct.
The marks go, it's a triple. And then they say whatever your number is, then you're free to release.
Correct. You can't, if she starts creeping, if you say sit, you're out.
Okay.
I mean, heel, here. No. Or once, let's just say, they're throwing a mark way at 3:00 and she's not seeing it. You say, here. You can't do that. You can't do that at all.
Okay.
So, that's the main thing. And another thing too is the flyer. You need to remember where the flyer lands because that's usually a really big area. And I see a lot of people that aren't used to that stuff. They're not paying attention because in HRC, usually wingers, and the bird lands in the same spot every single time. You watch one or two dogs run, you know exactly where it's at. A flyer and master can land anywhere. You need to remember where that's at.
And when will you see the flyer take place? Is that just once? Is that every single time you walk up?
It could be at any point in time. And you need to do a walk up. Eric, help me out here. So you do, and you need to prepare for a walk up triple.
Yes. So then you can
on a
walk
walk-up
up,
triple,
heel, sit, and you can't say no more. Remember that. Even on the walk up, once the birds start coming out, be quiet.
Yep. So when you do your walk-up series, it's probably going to be a triple, and the first mark out, I think the rule is it can't be any more than like 30. It's got to be like 35 yards, somewhere in there. So the first mark out is going to be right around 35 yards. When that bird, you can say heel, heel, heel. When that mark comes out, when that bird is peak of its arc, you can either say sit or blow the sit whistle one time, and that's it. One or the other. Once you do that, you can't say another word.
If you say it twice, you're out. You're done.
You're out.
If you say sit, just you get one. Okay.
Yeah. So,
and on the whole, on the whole test, you have one flyer. Just one.
No, it could be if they wanted to, you could have one every series.
Okay.
If they wanted to, you could have one every single mark.
Oh,
but
okay.
typically you get one flyer. Typically.
Okay.
Elliot, my input on this is going to be if there's water in the picture, you must get in it. Don't cheat the water.
Correct.
If it looks like a watermark, if you're cutting a little bitty sliver, the judges want to see you cut that little bitty sliver. If you're running blind and you think, oh man, it's right on the line, I'm going to let my dog be on the land side of it. 99.9% of the time, you are wrong. You need to be in the water. In a master test, it isn't like a finish test where the dog can cheat the whole water and still be okay. You better be in that water when you're supposed to be.
Yeah. And some judges, Elliot, will if it's a cheaty corner, they may not drop you immediately, but if it's a consistent problem where they've set up four quarter marks and you not hit any of the water, you're not going to make it. But you better make dang sure, like Eric said, if you're running a blind and there's something in line to the blind, a mound, a point, cover, you better hit it because it's there for a reason.
So they're a little bit more strict on those type of technical issues.
9 times out of 10, yes. And if you go back to an old fall, you're automatically out.
Right.
That's
so
HRC
handle.
is not like that. So handle, yes.
Okay. All right. Got
it. I've seen people not use their handle because they want to save it for later, but they're now out because they let their dog return to an old fall. That doesn't matter. You better use that handle and survive.
I watched somebody at the last Master National do that. I'm not going to say names. It rhymes with CCR.
Yeah, great hatch. I got something in my throat.
All right, good enough.
All right, guys. Well, Eric, thank you for sticking around for this long session. We've really appreciated having you as a guest. Tell them one more time, like last episode, where everyone can find you.
We can be hit at pretty much any social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Show Me Retrievers. You can also give me a phone call, 636-235-1122.
All right. Great.
Thanks, guys.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Elliot. Let's see everybody at the line. Take that aim.
Gotta strike this chord with the humble hearts, bearing heavy chains and blue collar scars. Inevitably you're gonna get the way. If it don't take that fight, take it to the grave.